Hi, welcome to Vegan Finds. This is the last night of our exploration of takeout food. And one of the things that we're going to be making tonight is what I'm going to call disco poutine. Now, some of you may be familiar with poutine, and some of you may be familiar with disco fries. Disco fries is I'm going to say it's a uniquely New Jersey, New York um, dish. And essentially, it's very similar to poutine. You take fries, you coat them in gravy, and then you add some cheese. With poutine, it's farmer's cheese, and it's got to be fresh farmer's cheese. And with disco fries, it's usually American cheese that they place on top and melt. And for some of you who know me, you're probably thinking, there's no way you eat that. And quite honestly, I'm shocked, but I do, and I like it a lot. My wife introduced me to that. I'd never had them before, and quite frankly, when she described what the food was, I was horrified. I said, "There's no way I'm going to touch that, even with a fork." But it turns out it's quite delicious. So, in order to make our poutine slash disco fries, I need to make the uh, farmer's cheese. And I'm going to be making this, and you're going to be able to follow along and do this recipe quite easily. As you can see here in my little tray, I've got some uh, cashews that are soaking. I've got a half a cup of cashews. They're going to soak for a half an hour or so. And the key ingredient, you can't make this without this particular ingredient. It's tapioca starch. Tapioca starch, also called tapioca flour, sometimes called manioc flour or manioc starch. This is the key to making the cheese that's going to go into this. The starch creates this long, stretchy, um, basically almost a spongy-like texture that you want to replicate the farmer's cheese. So I'm going to start prepping that, and I'll be back to show you all the steps. You need a good blender for this. It's a couple ingredients. It's the cashews, the starch, some nutritional yeast, a little salt, I think a little vinegar. I got to check my notes for that, but water and blend. Blend, and then you cook over very low heat in a pot, mixing vigorously until it all comes together. The starch will gelatinize, change its structure due to the heat, and become stretchy. You're gonna feel like, hey, this could be mozzarella, this could be this, it could be that, and you could add different flavorings to it to suit your needs. So this is kind of like a great base recipe to experiment with, and I'll be back. Okay, so to start our mozzarella slash farmer's cheese, whatever you want to call it, um, the cheese base, I'm taking the half a cup of cashews and I'm putting it into a blender. Now I'm going to add a quarter cup of tapioca starch and 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, a teaspoon of white vinegar, and a half a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to slowly add 1 cup of water. I'm going to start with a half a cup and then slowly incorporate the other half because you want this super blended smooth, no lumps. I'm just telling you right now, you want no lumps. If for some reason you do get lumps, pass it through a sieve or a nut milk bag or some cheesecloth just to get out any large pieces of cashew that remain. So I'm going to do that. I'll show you how, and I'll be back. Okay, so here's the tapioca starch going in. And just so you know, If for some reason you don't have a quarter cup measure, 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup. 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon. So 12 teaspoons equals 1/4 cup. Because if you're like me, these things disappear like socks in a dryer. So the next ingredient to go in is going to be the 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. Okay, here's 1. Having a little trouble scooping with this melted spoon here. And that's 2. Up is a 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. I'm using pink Himalayan sea salt. That seems to be all the rage these days. And a teaspoon of white vinegar. Don't have to use the good stuff for this. Whoop! Now that was definitely an error. Should have done this over a spoon, over a bowl. But all right. So there's going to be a little bit of extra vinegar in there. I don't think it's going to affect the recipe all that much. But now I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of this, and I'm going to start blending it. Okay, so I'm going to add a 1/2 cup here. Almost. And just so you know, when you're working with the tapioca starch, it literally will get everywhere if you're not careful. It is super fine as far as powders go, and don't be surprised if your shirt is covered in it when it's done. So I'm going to put the lid on this sucker. I'm going to go over to our blender. I'm going to start blending, and I'll be back to show you what it's supposed to look like before it goes into the pot. Okay, so there you have the blended precursor to our cheese. I'm just going to take out this part because it's going to fall into the pan, and I'm going to pour it right into our pot. There we go. And you're going to cook this on medium heat and stir constantly. Alright, so I've got the pan on. I just turned it on. It should take a couple of minutes to heat up. And you can see this is really super smooth. That's what you want when you're making this. No little nut pieces in there. And as it starts to heat up, you're going to start to see this kind of become a very gooey type of consistency. I'm actually going to lower the heat because this thing tends to be a little bit fussy. I'm already starting to see some of it come together a little bit. And this is kind of exciting. I've never actually made cheese before, vegan cheese. At least not like this. I've made cheese sauces, but I've not actually made a cheese that you can actually cut, turn into something else. We did buy a cheese making kit, a vegan cheese making kit. I bought that for my wife for Mother's Day. She was thrilled. She was thrilled. The couch was glad to have me, but you know, sometimes you have to listen with your ears and not with your taste buds. And so we now have a vegan cheese making kit that we will be showing you how to make some cheeses. We're actually going to do a cheese battle. We're going to try and gather up some recipes that we find. Up, you can start to see it's starting to come together already. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit more. It's really starting to thicken up. So the whole idea is to try and figure out whose recipe for vegan cheese is the best, so that way you're not out there, you know, making all this stuff and going, oh, I didn't like that. Oh, I don't like that. And you can see this is really now thickened up quite quite nicely. I'm actually going to continue to lower the heat at this point. You can start to see it's getting really that cheesy consistency that you want. And that's basically it. You can start to see it's starting to get all nice and stretchy. It's going to work out your arms a little bit. But no harm in that. So you can start to see it's starting to get a little bit of that rich gooiness that you want out of a cheese. Of course, you could use this as a base for a cheese dip as well. So I may have to start to experiment in some of that. And that's basically it. I'm going to now put this into a container and refrigerate it till it solidifies or sets up enough for me to cut it into chunks. So there you have your mozzarella. You can start to see it's really a gooey concoction here. So I'll be back to start the rest of the ingredients shortly. Okay, to make the vegan gravy, this is going to be obviously non-traditional because this is usually a brown gravy, you know, without any lumps, so to speak. But this is going to be lumpy because I'm actually going to be using mushrooms as the base. Now, if you don't want lumps as part of your gravy, you can quite simply put this in a blender and cook and basically blend it until it's smooth. Strain it through a sieve and you'll be all set. But I like mushrooms and I like the taste of mushrooms, so I'm going to just leave the mushrooms as is. So again, you don't have to do it my way, you can do it your way, and that's part of the cooking game. I don't think I've ever followed a recipe exactly according to how it was written, just simply because there's sometimes things I didn't like, either a flavor or an ingredient, so I made it my own. So these are going to start to cook down and release the water. I'm going to add a tablespoon of tamari to this. Tamari is gluten-free. It's a substitute for soy sauce. If you're not gluten-free, you can use soy sauce, or you could use coconut aminos if you don't want any soy in your diet or you're sensitive to soy. So there are options for you other than tamari and soy sauce. Okay, so I'm adding the 1 tablespoon of tamari. And to that, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup, once this has started to cook down a bit, of veggie stock. But in this veggie stock, I added a fake beef bouillon cube to give it a more beefy flavor. And I'm also going to add a tablespoon of umami powder. That'll also kind of amp up the meatiness of this dish. Okay, so you can see that the mushrooms have been cooking down quite a bit. Now I'm going to add our stock. I'm going to let that simmer just a bit. To that I'm going to add a tablespoon of the umami powder. Well, this is working out well. Alright, close enough. I'm going to lower this heat. And you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, how's this thing gonna thicken up? And traditionally you might use flour. I don't like the way, and since we're gluten-free, I don't really like the way rice flour tastes in the gravy. I've done it a few times before. It's not quite my favorite thing, so I'm going to actually add a half a tablespoon of potato starch. That should be enough. Whenever you want to thicken any kind of dish, starch is the way to go. Arrowroot starch, potato starch, obviously tapioca starch would work too, but I don't have much of that left, so I'm going to throw that in there, and it gets activated when it reaches that boiling point, so this will thicken up real quick. I probably should have added it to some water first. Normally you make a slurry, but I was in a hurry. So this is now going to cook up. It'll thicken up. This is going to be our gravy. I might not have added enough potato starch. I usually use tapioca starch to thicken my things, or arrowroot starch. I just happen to like those a little bit better. But depending on where in the world you're from, that will often dictate what kind of starch you have access to. Potato starch is really huge in the Asian world. Yeah, there we go. We're starting to see some thickening action here. And once this is thickened the way I like it, I'm going to take this out of the pan because I'm going to show you a cheater method of dealing with the disco part of the disco fries. And you can start to see it's now really starting to come together here. So I'll be back. The fries are cooking right now. I'm going to just take a little taste. Oh, that's so good. You will not need any salt, that's for sure. It's delicious. Pucker your mouth. And we are going to be good to go in a couple of minutes. Okay, folks, so I've been informed that I need to blend this sucker up, otherwise my daughter's not going to like it. So I don't know what she has against mushrooms, but we're going to blend this to a smooth consistency, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's our gravy. You can just see it's nice and smooth. Oh, it tastes so good. So the fries are done. Now it's time to put this all together. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Then I'm going to show you how to disco it. Okay, so we have our fries here. There you have disco poutine. So if you like these videos, please click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a message and give us a thumbs up. We hope you enjoy, we hope you're safe, and sayonara till the next time.